It's Friday, Feedback Friday, the feedbackiest day of the week. Ha! And we have a little special guest for Feedback Friday tonight. Zelly Belly. Hi, Zelda. You want to go? Okay, go play. Good girl. Wow, my lighting isn't so good here. Give me a second to fix that. There we go. That should be a bit better. There we go. Yeah, that's much better. I use my 4K monitor as like a fill light. I just put up like something white, like the Google Start page, and it's much better. But this is Feedback Friday, and this week went much better than I thought it would, comments-wise, which is good. Some new people who came to the channel recently, I guess, have never seen some of my women's issues videos. I would recommend you guys check out my series Lady Bits. There's a playlist on my main page of my YouTube channel. Check that out if you liked that video about female costumes and the stuff about female musicians and stuff. There's plenty of there on Lady Bits, 13 whole episodes of it. One person got on me. They said they downvoted for giving into censorship for me because of the Lady Gaga video. Let me explain this. I didn't have a choice. When I kept that in there with the video, no audio, just the video, they blocked the video internationally. I could not release the video with that content in there. It's not that I gave into censorship, it's that I actually was censored. There's this, I find that issue of giving into censorship bizarre. If you are censored, it is because somebody decides you cannot release your content. You can't give in to censorship. If you're self-censoring, that's one thing. But if you are censored, that is not your choice. So I found that kind of strange. Segueing into the comments I made about the Super Bowl, one person, politely and reasonably disagreed that my comments about thinking the J-Lo and Shakira thing was great. They said, no, it should be a family-friendly show, blah, 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 blah. I understand a lot of people have that point of view. My attitude is you are watching a sport that leaves the guys playing the sport with traumatic brain injury. You are watching a sport whose cheerleader costumes show more than J-Lo and Shakira were showing on a regular basis. It's a standard cheerleader costume. So the NFL already has that content. I'm not sure why the problem is the halftime show. Also, as commenters pointed out, guys like Adam Levine are shirtless all the time. There is a double standard. However, I personally think that shielding your children from sexy ladies, not overt sex acts, sexy things. First of all, a child does not know the connotations behind a pole. They have not been exposed to stripper content. I certainly hope not. They don't know what that means. As far as they know, it's just a prop in a performance. Trust me, the first time I saw Chicago when I was a wee little thing, I didn't understand half of what was going on. I just thought it was cool music and cool dancing and stuff. As an adult, I'm like, oh my, I saw this when I was 9? What? Of course, I was big into tap dancing, so that sort of music just appealed to me. But, it's like, what? I didn't catch any of this when I was a kid. And so if there's no simulated sex acts, and, all the, nipples and everything like that are covered, I don't think it is protecting a kid to shield them from that stuff. Because you don't get to control when the rest of the world intrudes on your child. Like any other thing you want to sort of shield them from, the better you give them, the sooner you give them some sort of knowledge of how the world works and what your expectations for them are, the better. I hate to break it to some of you. Oh, I left my sewing machine in the background. Oops. Oh, well. But kids nowadays are becoming sexually active as young as 9. That's not a good thing, but it's happening. I'm not talking full-blown sex. I'm talking about things like oral sex and things like that. I was shocked to find that out too, but a lot of 12 and 13-year-olds are pseudo-sexually active. Certainly when they get into their teens, they are. So there's no... there isn't a big window when we can teach kids healthy sexual attitudes. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying let your kids watch like naked sex porn stuff. No, 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 no. But, J-Lo dancing, hate to break it to you, your 10-year-old has probably already seen something similar on TikTok or Snapchat or YouTube. It's everywhere. I mean, shit, a Cardi B video is showing more than they did on that Super Bowl show. So this idea that this content is not family friendly, I don't agree, precisely because, one, you're watching a fairly, if not violent sport, than a sport that is not it is glorifying and celebrating a sport that even if you do it right, you end up getting injured. Part of the reason that NFL contract negotiations are so intense is because these guys know they are destroying their bodies and their brains to make money for themselves and their families. This is the trade-off they're making. And so if you are concerned about values passed on to a child, that I think is more important than what J-Lo is doing on a glowing pole. Like, it's a giant lightsaber. Just tell them that. J-Lo has a giant lightsaber, So that's what I say. And like I say, I understand why people have that point of view. I just don't agree. And I have my reasons based on some stuff I know, I know I was getting into content that my parents didn't know about. So, and fortunately, I read a lot of books. So kids as young as 8 or 9, where I grew up anyway, because teen pregnancy was a major issue, we had access to information, and sex was, at least for me, sex was so not taboo. It was so, this is what it is, and this is some of the stuff you should watch out for. I didn't feel the need to do it to show I was a grown-up. Same thing with alcohol. Alcohol was not treated like the demon liquor in my house, and so I didn't feel the need to binge drink or get drunk and all that stuff. I personally think that sort of moderate exposure, and obviously it's based on the kid, right? But again, if your kid is super sensitive, do you really want them watching a sport that is about guys trying to run into each other as hard as they possibly can, as fast as they possibly can? Because let me tell you, some of the worst injuries I sustained as a child were in games of Red Rover. If you don't know what Red Rover is, it is you form 2 chains where you link arms and you go Red Rover, we call, and you call the person's name out over, and that kid has to run as fast and as hard as you can and jump onto the arms and try to break apart the hands. People's fingers got dislocated. People's arms got messed up. This is what happens when you're in a neighborhood with no money and nothing to do. You play horribly stupid stuff like this. Another popular game was a game called Red Ass, where you threw a ball against a wall and you had 6 bounces. REDASS. Somebody had to catch it within 6 bounces. Or if you didn't, you had to run to the wall before somebody else caught the ball and whipped it at the wall. You had to get to the wall before the ball did. And if you got all REDASS, if you got all letters, you had to stand against the wall while your friends threw this. It was a dense rubber ball, because that's what hurt the most. And they got to throw it at your ass. this is what I did when I was a child. And people wonder why I preferred playing Metroid to playing with kids. You know, Double Dutch, you can get hurt doing that shit. Hopscotch, you can get hurt doing that shit. Metroid, safe. Yeah. So that's a brief history of me and possibly why I am the wonderful person I am today. Moving on to the sexy video game costumes, that inspired a lot of really interesting dialogue. I like that people shared what they found interesting, sort of general themes, or they found sexy. General themes were, context really matters. Personality really counts. That if a character's personality doesn't seem to match his or her look, it doesn't work. One person brought up the Killer Instinct series of games, and I admit I forgot there were sexy ladies in Killer Instinct, because to me, Killer Instinct is all about the amazing monster designs. I agree that there's some damn good. If people haven't seen Killer Instinct, I'll switch over here, because there's some amazing character designs. Arbiter's a Halo character, so never mind that. But Arya, doesn't she look like, I'm Astar, a robot. I can put my arm back on. You can't, so play safe. But there you have Cinder, Idol. Idol always reminds me of Too Bad from He-Man. Fulgor, the man. Fulgor, classic. That's freaking cool, man. Gargos, Gears of War character. Glacius. This character, Hisako, is that how I pronounce her name? She is terrifying, and I want more female monsters in video games. So that's why I'm shouting out, because more of characters like this, please. That's a cool little parallax effect they put on the website. I'll go through the rest of the characters, but she's cool. Jago, of course. Kanra, you'll see. Here we have ladies who I completely blanked out. I'm like, what? Oh, yeah. Kim Woo and Maya and Mira's kind of a monster. She's kind of a vampire. But Omen, Orchid. Do you see what I mean? Rash, there's a freaking Battletoad. Riptor. Come on. Saberwolf. Sadira's pretty cool. But okay. The monster characters are just so freaking cool in this game. My mind is just wiped from anything else. But let me show you Hisako and the glory that is this, because she is freaking terrifying, and we need more female monsters in games. Here we go. And she got the spike teeth. So she's like a spirit that protects this village. But look, that's friggin' terrifying. She's like Voldo meets Devora. And she's got the Naginata, which I like. That is the customary female weapon in Japan, because it overcomes a male reach advantage. So I like that little detail. And that's so scary. And it's so good. It's so good. Look out, Fulgor. You're in trouble. Yeah. Oh my god. She's just feeding him up with energy from the inside. I admit I find Killer Instinct a bit busy for my preference, but the character designs, yes, are utterly impressive. Yeah. Here we are. We're going to do a bit of a Clive Barker's Undying riff in a minute. But I love that there's, the weapon choice for a female Japanese character is correct. They're dealing with sort of Eastern occult stuff, which is the elongated face. But isn't that cool? Isn't she cool? I think she's cool, personally. That's a few years old by now, obviously, based on the video quality. But that's why I completely forgot that there were sexy ladies in Killer Instinct, because the minute I encounter Killer Instinct at all, I'm like, monsters, because their monsters are so good. So yes, I agree that Killer Instinct has some utterly excellent character designs, but the monsters are where it's at, not the sexy female characters. It's funny, moving on to speaking of things I completely forgot, the Baldur's Gate 3 video and talking about how BioWare should be worried. There were characters I completely forgot were in that game. Cassandra was one. I'm like, Cassandra just disappeared from my mind. And she was one of my favorite, like, characters I didn't romance. And that's an interesting, and I mean, Cole, I really like Cole, though I first encountered Cole in one of the novelizations. That's how big into Dragon Age I was before Inquisition. And I ended up, on my second playthrough, I played as an elf and did the Solus romance plot line, and that was pretty good. I know a lot of people hate Solus. You actually had to do that, because the thing about Solus is he's racist. He is very much an elf supremacist. There are reasons, but yeah, if you play as an elf, he's very interesting, but he's racist. And you know what? I'm okay with that. The idea of, like, elves and dwarves being racist against each other goes back a long ways in fantasy, and there's a shining example of just because a character is racist doesn't mean a game is racist. It requires sort of an overall zeitgeist in a game to say a game is sexist or a game is racist, as opposed to particular elements being a problem. It's very hard to name. It's very easy to name moments in games, thanks to, design mistakes or whatever that come with it, an element of sexism. But it's very difficult to name an entire video game just because of the way video games work that is across the board sexist. It's I don't think I could name three. But yeah, that's just an indication of how disappointed I was in Inquisition, that I was so overwhelmed by disappointment that I forgot the characters I liked. I forgot about Cole. I forgot about Cassandra. I remembered Cullen. I really like what they did with Cullen with delirium addiction and everything like that. I remembered that part. That wasn't really relevant to what I was talking about, but I couldn't believe I completely forgot about Cole and Cassandra. That is how deep my disappointment for Dragon Age Inquisition went. And it wasn't just the story. It's that I didn't like the gameplay in that game. I know they tried to make it better than the previous two, but I don't think they succeeded. And I know some people disagree with me with that. It's very hard to make gameplay that is all things to all people. And granted, Larian has the benefit of hindsight with Baldur's Gate 3. And they saw what didn't work in Inquisition, and they saw what didn't work in apparently even their past games have a lot of that. So I'm very interested in Divinity Original Sin 2. I just don't know when I'm going to have time to play it. 'Cause I don't think RPGs play well on Twitch. Tell me if I'm wrong, please. But I do want to play it. But that just shows me how. And I when I first played Dragon Age 2, I was bummed because it wasn't this big epic story that Dragon Age Origins was, but I could think of entire modules of that game that were utterly incredible. The standout to me is a story with Isabella and the Arashok, but Varric was so standout. I thought Fenris's story, one of the few, male sexual assault survivors in gaming. Oh, I said sexual assault, video demonetized. Oh, I forgot to do the patron lately. Video probably demonetized now because the people that just report my videos all the time. Now they have a reason. Help support this channel. Become a monthly patron. Patreon.com/LeannaK. Because the minute I go into something like this, demonetized. But Fenris is one of the few instances I can think of a male character who is a survivor of sexual assault. And it's hinted at, but basically he was a sex slave for a mage. And I thought that was really cool. And I thought that the way they made him kind of standoffish and angry, and that I thought was actually a really beautiful romance subplot in the game. I thought that was very well written, and nothing in Inquisition quite got there. I'd say the worst romantic subplot, romance option in Dragon Age 2 was very much on par with the best romantic storyline in Dragon Age Inquisition. There might be a little bit of overlap there, but not much. I found that the characters, Dragon Age Inquisition felt like that, you know, when a pop act has an album that goes huge, and then they have an album because they need to get an album out while they're touring, and it's all the stuff that didn't make it onto the first album, and so it's nowhere near as good. That's how Dragon Age Inquisition felt to me. And it wasn't necessarily their fault. They were forced to rush out Dragon Age 2, and so it fucked up all their storytelling planning. Yeah, Inquisition just... It wasn't a Bioware game. It was a Bethesda game in the Frostbite engine, and you felt it. And that's why... I mean, I've been really burned out for if you had told me after I played The Witcher 2 back in the day that The Witcher 3 would be my favorite high fantasy RPG that I've played, you know, in the last few years or so, I would have thought you were crazy. But The Witcher 3 was an excellent game. And it shows you can do it with console controls, and you can make it interesting. And I mean, that Bloody Baron storyline was really challenging, very morally challenging. You know, the stuff with Triss and Yen, and you can't collect women in this game. You have to choose, or you wind up with nobody. I thought, and you know, his relationship with Ciri and everyone, I just thought it was so well done and such a wonderful maturing of the character. It was a really great place to leave it, at least for a while. But yeah, if you had told me after those first couple Witcher games that The Witcher 3 was going to be that good, I would have thought you were crazy, but it is that good. And when you compare the spark of life that is in The Witcher 3 with Dragon Age Inquisition, that was a mile wide and inch deep. Like, there's no comparison, right? From the gameplay to the story to the performances. And I mean, there was nothing wrong with the performances in Dragon Age Inquisition. There was just nothing as memorable as, you know, the most memorable characters were characters that previously appeared in other games. Except for Cole, who appeared in a book. Cassandra, for the record, was actually introduced in the framing sequences in Dragon Age 2. That her premiere wasn't in Dragon Age Inquisition. But thank you, commenter. Yes, Cassandra, very good character. I did not do the Cassandra romance, so I can't comment on that. But just as a party member, Cassandra was one of my favorite characters in the game. And I really didn't understand, like, this is an example of some people thought she was ugly. I actually thought the Cassandra character was very sexy in kind of a Ruby Rose and Batwoman kind of way before Ruby Rose existed. I was sort of surprised the character was straight because, and more power to them for doing this, more power of having a character who, they're straight. They can't do anything about it. But man, I think they could have told a way better, like, lesbian romance with Cassandra than with Sarah, who I know there are people who love that character. I cannot stand that character. That character, it takes a lot to offend me. That character offended me because of the what I considered very juvenile, very childlike element of that relationship. It just felt like lesbian stereotypes from start to finish. That's just me. That was my emotional reaction to it. I'm not saying I would intellectually defend that position. I'm just saying that's how it felt to me. It felt so stereotypical. Somebody else mentioned that the verbal abuse, the emotional abuse that the Iron Bull throws at Dorian, if you don't romance Dorian, you know, it's true. I was bothered by that. I didn't think that, and then they end up in sort of a sexual relationship, and I'm like, man, that's not healthy. BioWare has a bad habit, though, of doomed gay relationships. It's not quite kill your gays, but all the gay relationships are doomed. Whether it's in Dragon Age or in Mass Effect, they never stay together. Now, granted, one could claim that in Mass Effect, nobody stays together, but I thought that the way, because if you haven't played Mass Effect in the Steve, what's his name, Cortez, I played that through. I never play Mass Effect as a guy because Jennifer Hale's voice acting, but I played through just for that storyline because the idea of him, the romance option being a widower, or what would you say in a gay relationship when they've lost their spouse? His husband had died, and so he was trying again. And the whole game, he's like, if I ever lost you, I don't know what I'd do, all that stuff. And anybody who's played to the end of Mass Effect 3 knows how it ends. There's no way around it. And it's like, that is awful and bullshit and terrible, and this game is torturing this really nice guy. The hell. I felt awful being a part of the potential psychological destruction of a character like that. That's how into it I used to get into these games. And the fact that you go through all of this stuff with Dorian and then, oh no, he has to go back to defend her. There's no payoff there. I mean, okay, granted, if you marry Alistair in Dragon Age Origins, it turns out he's miserable in Dragon Age 2. So maybe the BioWare writers and staff just don't have the best track record with relationships themselves, and they're kind of bitter about it. For all the romance in Dragon Age games, the relationships actually end up in very cynical places. And I think by the time they hit Inquisition, and let's face it, part of the reason they're doing it is for continuity. The fact that they have these continuing storylines game to game. I would personally prefer that, because with Dragon Age, it's a different main character. It's a different playable character every time, that they could just ride off into the sunset with the person they romanced, happy ending, next story, please. Like, don't wreck a relationship that people emotionally invested in. And that was sort of the magic, excuse the cliche, the appropriation of the cliche. That was BioWare magic to me. They managed to make me care about these characters. That eroded severely in Inquisition. And, then this is where I was going with this. Watching that Baldur's Gate trailer, Baldur's Gate 3, I intellectually recognized these characters are cliches. The pre-built characters that... And of course, I'm probably going to play the Githyanki lady first, because monsters. The takeaway, Leanna likes monsters, especially female monsters. But the characters are cliches, but I found myself caring about them, despite myself. And it wasn't because the voice acting was excellent. It wasn't because they told us very much about the characters. There's just something about a good RPG that you buy in and it's inexplicable. It is something about the total package that makes you want to care. And maybe it's because they all have like worms in their eyes that are going to turn them into illithids if they don't stop it. Maybe it's that existential threat that makes me bond. But I wanted to play as these characters and with these characters. And I do not feel that way about an upcoming Dragon Age game. They are really going to have to wow me with advanced footage and advanced like gameplay demonstrations. And let's face it, that hasn't been BioWare's track record of late. Neither Mass Effect Andromeda or Anthem had a ton of pre-release stuff. So, like I said, I want BioWare to do well with Dragon Age 4. I ain't holding my breath. I've moved on. And if I've moved on, somebody who was like at one point a hardcore BioWare fan, they could do no wrong with, well, Neverwinter Nights, elements of that, but for very nerdy reasons. But like, I kept coming back and I kept coming back and I played absolutely everything they put out. And then I was disappointed by Inquisition. I didn't finish Andromeda, and I played maybe 5 hours of Anthem on some, I didn't buy it. I borrowed it. So people move on if you don't keep up consistent quality. And again, I knew nothing about Larian before they got this. I haven't played Divinity Original Sin or Divinity Original Sin 2, but I'm looking forward to it. And again, like I said, that's sort of the magic. I could attempt to explain why, but I don't. Something just connected with the gameplay. I wanted to play that game. It was probably more the gameplay than anything. It seemed in-depth enough that even if the story isn't that great, I'm still going to enjoy the experience, right? Right, because these are games, right? Not movies. So I'm going to wrap it there. Have a very good weekend. Play some video games. Doom is soon. But once again, like I said, this video is probably going to get demonetized, so help support this channel. Become a monthly patron, patreon.com/LeannaK. Thanks for watching.